sleeping spaces. We all fished the flats, miles from our places. With an hour or so free as the tender departed, Casey came visiting before fishing restarted. Denise, Mark, and I were eating our lunch, sitting on slippy skiffs, temporary bunks. Casey tied up and joined us a while, accepting a sandwich with a tired, wry smile. Not much to mention. What in the world is wrong with your... Her concern industry. But just shook his head at the time. I ordered these boots from that outfit in town. They had nothing to fit me when I was around. My other one leaked and no one could spare the time or the research to loan me a pair. The mail plane dropped these off some 3 weeks ago, and now I don't even notice my poor right toe. There's nothing to do but see the season complete. I've just gotten used to having 2 left feet. Not yet, not yet. Little bit more. Tom's short white boots from the Alabama season where he dragged for shrimp became such a beacon that when he walked down the beach to visit us once, they looked like 2 headlights blinking in the distance. Decked out in fish scales, the white plastic shimmered, surpassing the look of our own boots so covered. The scales caught the light, blinking purple and pink, canceling descriptions of gurry and stink. His boots danced the beach from the toes to the cuffs, but we noticed next morning Tom was back in extra tufts. Whatever our fortunes, whatever our losses, whether we're crewmen or highliner bosses, on board or on land, our boots are our main kit. And the last one, it's called Alaskan Night. Even though it sort of encapsulates the whole feeling of being up there, and even though it happened at the very beginning of our time up there and the beginning of our marriage. Newly married, my first season in Kodiak and late at night, Alan said to me, "Come with me, I want to show you something." We left the warm cabin. The midnight sun, never casting shadows, barely outlined the smoothness of hills and bay. Pulling in the first skiff on the line, we watched the bright phosphorescence trace each draw of the skiff through the black water. He motored on low to the middle of the bay and cut the engine. "Listen," he said. The water lapped softly into the night. The vastness of twilight sky and darkened earth and sea surrounding. 2 dolphins arched near us. Their rise from the fathomless depths was followed by a retortive air expelling and the taking of another breath. As always, each animal turning slightly to look at us with one eye, the breezeless night strengthening the silence. Al stood and put one hand out to the night. Galvanized tin stars dotted the foggy sky, the hills barely breaking from the blue-gray backdrop of mountains and coldly bathed by a sliver of white moon. Through the quiet and the weight of an endless space without daylight, I knew he was hearing the life of this place he loved, the footfalls of the deer and mountain sheep, the cacophony of a million seabirds, coughing barks of red foxes, the huff of grizzlies, and the scuttling scurry of voles and ermines. I know he heard the eagles soaring over them all, their great wings whispering, as they watched the wild and timeless rush of silver rivers of salmon drawn through time and passion to their ends and to their new beginnings. From that moment, I understood the fisherman's heart.
So, what a start. Thank you. Okay, what just happened? There we go. You might be interested to know that Michelle is a generous supporter of the FisherPoets gathering, always in memory of Alan Abramson, 27 years of Kodiak crab and salmon fisherman. So she's one of our sponsors. Thank you, Michelle. I'd also like to say thank you to Judy and Milt Stewart, Tom and Vicki Stringfield, and the Alfred Landwehr family, all of which are supporters for the FisherPoets gathering. We have a, yes, go ahead. Thank you. We have a long list of supporters, and we'll read those during the night. But so our next FisherPoet, you're going to have to help me with your last name. What? Lucas Raitt. And he said he will introduce himself. So Lucas, please come up and please welcome Lucas Raitt.
Test, 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 test. Thank you. I'll keep my bio brief. My name is Lucas Raitt. I'm from Homer, Alaska. I grew up drifting and longlining on Cook Inlet. This is a lifelong sea brother of mine, Aaron Barker, also a Homeroid. Set netter out of Dillingham, but we're still friends. We still speak, drift netter and set netter. It's been 30 years since I picked my last fish, I'm embarrassed to say, but poetry has helped me hold on to the formative industry and role models that have shaped my life ever since. So to my sea brothers and good ghosts, these are for you. George Mackay Brown is a Scottish poet, one of my favorites. I'll begin with a quote from him. A fisherman has need of good ghosts. So this first poem is called Good Ghosts. Now this, heard in jawbone, the wave of drunken whale song, cockeyed melodies, beaten boats and gunnel-grated piles, harpooned in slick gray river skin, the mud bank of gray matter and ghosts, muffled in rainy clay. Sandpiper stamped the cuneiform of slow flow and channel, a pigeage of water language, stippled in smoothness. Below the collapsing cannery, the cadenced metronome of windshield wiper smeared starlight. The tinnitus of fathometer set anchor lights asweep. Dark ghosts cut loose their black moorings, weaved out by grim mouth, twisted corked tongues into bullkelp and riprack. Good was the specter of spring current, of spindrift and spume. The ghosts worked the ready treadle, wove fathoms from monofilament skein. The fleece of cold water wool spun through sounding long line. Their crucifying eyes wove pattern to the world, pulled being from spectral loomings, caught light to surface. They sang Tura Lura Lural and Ring Dang Do, and chewed and spoke in ghost codes of candlefish and lemon shark. The nets stretched holes to ocean. 1,000 snapped ganyons marked bedrock passage in shadow. I wear these blue lullabies, now bunked and birthed in remote water body, attuned yet to these echoes still drummed in a whiskered jawbone. I'm just going to read until people tell me to quit. But number 2 is called Tow Line. Again, this is all drift gill netting centered, so we have tow lines. I've been reading Far Tortuga for the second time by Peter Matheson. Beautiful lines. I wanted to start with a couple quotes. Horizon rises from horizon, and the horizon swells. So this poem is called Tow Line. How consigned to current we disengage, drift up and in by flood, inhale the surge and swell, then hold slack, squint into existence, idle in time and tide, breath then will ebb in exhalation of ripe decline, adrift between torn hunks of peninsula and peninsula. We towed the green tide's taut, forced the flow of sleek dreams through glove-orange fingers, between sleep and long-fathomed curl of cork that pearled arc bent in twine-hung ephemeris. The needlework, now bowed by flood and fin, by diesel blood engine. We stretched the day long with horsepower, bent the green water red. Sea level is just another wrinkle in shredded coastline of a wiggly world, of an uncertain animal swimming blindly in the muddy clear nimbi of goodbyes and so longs, spits and harbors, molted feathers rolling and reflected distortions in the boozy slosh of compass spirit. Flagging out is easy, aligning with tide and so many sockeye tuned like iron filings to magnetic rivers in a world without lines, parallels, and perpendicularities. I'll let the moon do the talking. I'll drink the drifts from a can and impose my hubris on that old peculiar Pacific. Cleated to cochlear coil, the tow line, the one straight line in fluid universe, howls the shanties of Kronos, strained to the absolute, strummed by atmosphere's blue finger, snapping silver sea over fair leads, a scatter of stormy stars and jellyfish tendrils to sting the eye into seeing. I hear carabiners crying psalms to the wind, blood and gurry, the pagan liquor. The tow line drips the brothy sacramentum of lost oaths, blown sideways to radar rings, the emerald arcs of otoliths. Tow the bone-ringed years in rumb line across the double base of meridian. Before that one, even the air defiant in urgent current refracts and fractures, angled steep to crusted origin. Sternward lies the straight line, cleated to a brittle rib, curled about the silty rivers of a heart's bilge water, disappeared in the sheening gray-green and sheet steel of Cook's Inlet. Vanishing points spear cork lines long curl. The sea bulges to a salmon belly moon. Thank you. One more? Holy criminy. All right. I'm going to finish on he said he was to the occasion. With an ancient Greek proverb. Death and cease. Like that cod that came quick. Now toward Saret. Socket, gazing at the other. Split vision by ick assent about suffering the masters were never wrong. Pressure-wrenched gas bladder and alabaster mango, taut inside out, erupting from the mouth. 3 fish, your children, flopped limp, sliding in and out of scupper, flaccid on anchor chain, fetal on hold hatch, fevered, weak in those once fireweed cheeks, inside out, panting silent whispers with sick lips, like that codfish for death's merciful gaff. Of the world and rose to the occasion. Thank you. Oh, sweet. All right. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Let's do. Should we do spotter pilots or gills? What? Okay, I'm going to do one called gills here. It's pretty short. The longest part of it is a quote from Moby Dick. And the quote is, "Methinks we have hugely mistaken this matter of life and death. Methinks that what they call my shadow here on earth is my true substance. Methinks that in looking at things spiritual, we are too much like oysters observing the sun through the water, and thinking that thick water the thinnest of air. Methinks my body is but the lees of my inner being. With that, here's the poem called Gills. Were I to slice a giant smile from earstone to earstone, strip my missiled head from twisted web, unzip this old backbone through fatal lace, bash my body in horrific rhythm on deck drum, gash these gills, gasp black poems, and grow rigid? Were I in those throes to think of mud and shadows and worn gravel, stare a lidless stare toward a careless eye, open slick mouth, you might write a few lines with the edge of that fillet blade of our short time together.
What a bathroom, but come back. Great stuff coming up. Okay, and I'd also like to thank Sea Grant, Oregon, the City of Astoria Arts and Cultural Fund, and the Oregon, and the Astorian for its long support, their long support of the FisherPoets gathering. Thank you.
Hurrah, me lads, get underway, right welcome comes the warning. Up, up on deck, all hands obey, we're homeward bound this morning. You Tom and Dick and Joe and get your anchor. Here, boy, lay out to the mizzen gaff and lose away the spanker. Heave, heave, me souls, and four ahead, the breeze is gently blowing. And while the morn is tinged with red, we're off with sheets a-flowing. You Tom and Dick and Joe and Jack, stand by to get your anchor. Here, boys, lay out to the mizzen gaff and lose away the spanker. Once more your windlass man, me boys, and walk her up so cheerily. Heave round and break her, there she starts, your anchor up or nearly. You Tom and Dick and Joe and Jack, stand by to get your anchor. Here, boy, lay out to the mizzen gaff and loose away the spanker. Let's walk around, we're homeward bound, each moment brings us nearer. So heave and haul, me hearties all, for friends and home that's dear. You Tom and Dick and Joe and Jack, stand by to get your anchor. Here, boy, lay after the mizzen gaff and loose away the spanker. Homeward bound, a magic word, how sweet the heart's emotion. So memory strikes the magic chord afar upon the ocean. You Tom and Dick and Joe and Jack, stand by to get your anchor. Here, boy, lay after the mizzen gaff and loose away the spanker. Then ho, for home we come, all dangers nobly braving. Look out for a welcome shout, and banners proudly waving. You Tom and Dick and Joe and Jack, stand by to get your anchor. Here, boy, lay after the mizzen gaff and loose away the spanker.
It's my brother Mike and me, with my oldest son Anthony, on this wooden trawler built in our backyard. Now it's time to set our nets. The big boats haven't got here yet. When you're out here all alone, it isn't hard. Well, the young men say that the fishing's slow, but we're catching plenty, it's a price that's low. It's either this or join the company. But if the rates they pay to those tubs of steel are the same for mine with their wooden keel, I'd rather fish these waters with just us three. Winds against us, tides against us, bad bills, and the fog leans hard against us. It's a rotten deal, but it's the best job that a man can do when his two best friends are his only crew. When his own son says he's glad to take the wheel. Well, each time we make this run, she sticks out like a big sore thumb. She's the oldest vessel on these fishing grounds. And no profit has she turned, except for all the respect we've earned, and that's still worth something in this fishing town. Well, I fished the same way on the sea that my father learned and he taught to me. For the big boats guarantee you'll get your share, but they make the rules for the work you'll do, and they'll scrap your boat and let go your crew, just to pay you steady 12 months of the year. Winds against us, tides against us, bad bills, and the fog leans hard against us. It's a rotten deal, but it's the best job that a man can do when his two best friends are his only crew. When his own son says he's glad to take the wheel. Ah, but what's this worth to me? I'd rather go out slow with dignity. No catch of mine I'll sell to foreign lands. Besides, any wage I'd make a year still couldn't pay off all this broken gear. When it's time to quit, I'll know just where I stand. Winds against us, tides against us, bad bills, and the fog leans hard against us. It's a rotten deal, but it's the best job that a man can do when his two best friends are his only crew. When his own son says he's glad to take the wheel. It's my brother Mike and me, with my oldest son Anthony, on this wooden trawler built in our backyard. Now it's time to set our nets. The big boats haven't got here yet. When you work out here alone, it isn't hard.
Well, ships may come and ships may go, as long as the seas do roll. Every sailor lad likewise his dad, he loves that blowing bowl. Now laughs ashore they do adore, one that is plump and round. When your money's all gone, it's the same old song. Get up, Jack John, sit down. Singing, hey laddie, oh laddie, turn that capstan round and round. When money's all gone, it's the same old song. Get up, Jack John, sit down. Well, I might take a trip on a clipper ship to China or Japan. In Asia there are ladies fair who love their sailor man. Well, Jack and Joe, Calivers, oh, they'll buy the girls a gown. When the money's all gone, it's the same old song. Get up, Jack John, sit down. Singing, hey laddie, oh laddie, turn that capstan round and round. When the money's all gone, it's the same old song. Get up, Jack John, sit down. When Jack's ashore, he'll make his way to some old boarding house. He's welcome in with rum and gin and fed that pork and souse. He'll spend and never offend until he's drunk on the ground. When the money's all gone, it's the same old song. Get up, Jack John, sit down. Singing, hey laddie, oh laddie, turn that capstan round and round. When the money's all gone, it's the same old song. Get up, Jack John, sit down. When Jack is old and weather beat, too old to roust about, at some rum shop they'll let him in, and at 8 bells he's turned out. Well, he'll cry and he'll cry into the skies, I'll soon be homeward bound. When the money's all gone, it's the same old song. Get up, Jack John, sit down. Singing, hey laddie, oh laddie, turn that capstan round and round. When the money's all gone, it's the same old song. Get up, Jack John, sit down. Well, Jack is home. He's bought a boat, a catboat with a hole. The boatyard crew, they love old Jack until they found out what he owed. Well, the stem is rotted, centerboard trunk leaks, the mast is cracked, oh boy. Today she's up on a marine railway, tomorrow she'll be hauled away. Singing, hey laddie, oh laddie, turn that capstan round and round. When the money's all gone, it's the same old song. Get up, Jack John, sit down. To all of you fine mariners, wherever you may sail, when the money's all gone, it's the same old song. Get up, Jack John, sit down. Singing, hey laddie, oh laddie, turn that capstan round and round. When the money's all gone, it's the same old song. Get up, Jack John, sit down.
Well, she's 21 feet at the water line.
We're going to be starting again. Please. And if you're say about you. Okie dokie. We're getting ready to start again. I'll just mention a couple things. Remember the contest poem. It's a 3-breath poem about sounds, or about commercial fishing sounds. Have a few cocktails. Yeah, we'll start a little bit early. And he's responsible for me coming to my first FisherPoets. I've known him for a long time. He's a very good friend of mine and an excellent poet. So please welcome Pat Dixon.
I paid those people. Thank you, Rob. I commercial fished in Cook Inlet, Alaska for 20 years and as a drift fisherman. And in 2020, my wife Veronica said, "Are you going to finish the book?" And I said, "What book?" And she said, "The one you started 10 years ago." And I said, "Really?" She said, "You got nothing else to do. It's the pandemic." So this was the result. It's called Waiting to Deliver. It is not about pregnancy. And I'm going to read from it, and I'm going to read 3 pieces. And I'm kind of pushing the envelope for time, so I'm going to jump right in. It was unreliable. He probably coasted through. Went to China. When she was done, it doesn't take the brush of an elbow too close to the edge. Watch with move and complete a full circle for or 10-inch crescent range, or being out of your pocket as you bend down in the air before you know it. It lands on the water's surface like you land on the bed after a long day, blankets fluffing, rising as they are displaced, absorbing the impact and falling back again. Only the water receives and moves aside. And your knife, the one you spent all those seasons sharpening, the one you got in France years ago on vacation, a gift from the vendor who loved that you were a commercial fisherman and insisted you take it, is suddenly out of reach, beneath the surface, fading, getting smaller. Out of your mouth. Like your friend, to the edge after the struggle to hang on to the rail while the disease rolled under her. Or the buddy who was brushed away in the morning light when a car crested the hill and elbowed him into the air before he knew it. A short fall into deep water. That was for my friends Debbie and Jeff. This one is called A Lot to Hold, and it's for Sherry. I got an email from a good friend in Kenai who said she'd gone down to the old Columbia Wards cannery. During my fishing career, where my locker was, where I stored supplies and used the little green electric train up and down, to and from the loft, where I'd driven forklifts, where fishermen for decades hung their nets, and where I had walked hundreds of times with my camera was no longer there. Gone were the enormous rafters in the egg house, where cannery workers of all nationalities scrawled their names and the years they worked in the plant, some of them as far back as the 1920s, when the cannery was rebuilt after the fire. But now those rafters were no more. The entrepreneur who bought the cannery after Ward's Cove shuttered it 2 years after I left decided it was a bad investment and sold the warehouse, hauling the pieces downriver, and to the fish and the winds and the history sinking in their wake. I visit that cannery every time I return to Kenai since moving away in 1998. Far more than in Indiana, where I spent my childhood, except for the one spring where they put a restaurant and making hotel houses. Once it stopped, it felt like a ghost town. As I walked the yard during those visits, I swear I could hear fishermen long gone, still laughing on the boardwalk. Freezer plant from the dock to a boat that wasn't there. That the distance between fathoms. My footsteps could no longer walk. I thought about what to write in tribute to this passing, and I decided I needed to revisit the following piece. It's about a warehouse that's fortunate to still be standing across the inlet. Some fishermen. They're trying to keep it alive. But they haven't changed much. They're trying to keep it from going further into disrepair. They get what it is they purchased. Snug Harbor Cannery, Chisholm, sound muffled on wood. The smooth by the decades of footsteps transmits the noise of my passing with little more than a whisper. I walk back in time. My eyes adjust to dim light, filtered yellow by ancient discolored windows. I pick my way through strewn manila line and coiled electrical cords. The warehouse whispers silently in my head with years of engine repairs and assembly line canning of salmon. Rusted saws and axes still lean against rough-hewn plank walls and stout support beams. Pallet after pallet of diesel boat engines wait silently in a row, bound by dust-covered plastic. Nets wrapped in dark, forgotten corners like old fat men in a steam bath. Nested sheets of faded green corrugated fiberglass roofing lean against a wall beneath broken windows. Below my feet, I can hear the small waves of the incoming tide roll the gravel of this remote Alaskan beach. The warehouse sits on pilings above the tide line of Tuxedni Bay on the west side of Cook Inlet, accessible only by boat or plane. It is my first year as a deckhand, and my skipper has brought us here for groceries, ice for the cooler, and a shower. Eyes of history in this warehouse. Under its spell, I drift up the stairs to the web loft, where I find wooden floors worn smooth with years of dragging nets and line to racks for mending or hooks for hanging. Outboard motors sit on racks wooden rafters. Reminds me of a cathedral. And white and yellow words. More. 58, 59, 34. Canner workers, tendermen, and fishermen these rafters to write their names. They spent here from a recent Filipino names, native Alaskan. One date after them, others with repeated sequential numbers testifying to summer after summer working fish. The gear locker doors below the beams display more names written there. Names is left uncrossed. Behind I find these on the floor and bend down and pick it up. I look up and for a moment consider writing my name too. But I'm a green deckhand at the start of my first season, and I think I haven't yet earned the privilege. Maybe another year, if I survive. I put the chalk down with a reverence I rarely feel, and I walk away. 10 years later, after 2 seasons fishing as a crew and 8 as a skipper, after finally learning ropes I hadn't even realized were there to learn, figuring out how to catch fish, fix boats, and survive rough weather, I return, this time looking for chalk. 10 years after that, I find myself back again, this time with my 11-year-old son. Together, we climb the old stairs to the loft. I show him my name on a beam near the windows and the years that are written next to it. There are some more to add today. It is his 3rd season with me, and neither of us know it's to be our last. I show him, I'm sorry. There it is. I ask him if he wants to put his name up there too, next to mine. And together we find a half a piece of chalk on a table filled with old mending twine and needles. As I had done alone so many years ago, we climb steep steps up to the planks that lay through the center of the latticed rafters. We lie down and stretch, one at a time, to reach the beams waiting for us, his just above mine. They are above the window that looks out on the bay, looks out on Snug Harbor. I add my years to the space beyond my name and then hand him the chalk. Hang on a minute, I say. I go down the stairs, and after he writes his name above mine, I take his photograph. Once the film is developed, back at home later that month, we see the photograph together. The picture is dim, slightly blurred, but he is there forever, more in my mind's eye than on the emulsion, writing his name upon the rafters of our history, of our past, of our lives. In her note about the Kenai warehouse, my friend said, I was blown away by the size of the hole that building left. That's true in more ways than one. After all, it was a commercial fishing warehouse. It had a lot to hold. Thank you. This last piece is a title piece to Waiting to Deliver. And fortunately, isn't as heavy as the first pieces. On the good day, when the boats return home, low in the water, holds full, nets wrapped around salmon rolled on the reel. After picking half the net and laying it back out while the fish keep heading all day long, no time, even water, your face beard streaked black by gurry, dotted white with scales, back aching, fingers and wrists sore. You find energy reserves, threads of adrenaline buried deep, sustain you till you've made the run home and toss a line hanging off the port stern to the starboard side of the tender in the middle of the river. This day of donkey work, this day of absolution isn't over, won't be for hours. At the back of the queue, you know you'll be here past dinner, past dark, maybe past dawn. You'll eat a baked potato and a red salmon garnished with lemon, onion, and butter less than 2 hours from the time you plucked it alive from the sea. You'll wash it down with a cold beer from the cooler, watch the sunset, and think how this is the best, most complete life you can imagine. Salt air cools as shadows lengthen, and the water changes from blue to black. You trade bunk time with your deckhand and fall asleep before your head hits the pillow. The smack of a boat hook on the bow wakes you both as the next boat in line cuts you all loose and to go deliver, and those of you still tethered together like a serpent in the glare of arc lights work to move up, fighting the current, pulled and yanked off course by boats fore and aft, bumping throttles forward, neutral, reverse, trying not to ram the one ahead of you, hoping the one behind you does the same. Your deckhand fends off as you swing too close to the vessels sleeping to starboard. And you all slide back. Engine after engine fleets as they stretch taut. Light a smoke. Thank you.
Oh man, we got. Thank you very much, Pat. How about another round for Pat? That was awesome. Okay, Brad Warren, writer for National Fisherman, ran Pacific Fishing Magazine, fished as a deckhand for Rich Bard, and runs nonprofit Global Ocean Health. Here's Brad Warren, sorry. Sorry.
Here, does anybody know that? Great. The thing with plastic guitars is they're shop on a raft trip, thanks to Nancy Cook, who organized it through a group up on the Copper River. And thank you. All right. Oh man, I'd have gone on the wrong one for sure. All right. Okay. These will be familiar to some folks. Anything coming through? Okay. I grew up in a family where my grandparents were among the thousands and thousands of people who lost more than one could speak. It wasn't just the fish. And there was no getting back. My grandfather's river fed every family in town. Fish ran through our bloodline, deep, steady, and strong. Deep, steady, and deep. Fun to do. Steady and sound, deep, steady and sound, deep, steady and sound, deep, steady and sound. Thank you. You guys are good. High up in the mountains, creeks tumble and join. Many songs come together, deep, steady, and sound. Deep and sound. Deep, steady, and sound. Fish come in the winter, spring, summer, and fall. Fatten up in the ocean, they keep the forest tall. My grandfather's river clean through mountains and canyons. She gathered the stream all the way down. She watered the land. Every valley with a generous hand. Where am I? Song of the highlands, song of the deep. They meet at the river mouth. They make a symphony. Song may go quiet. Fish may not always come around. This river, she's waiting, deep, steady, and sound. Deep, steady, and sound. Deep, steady, and deep, steady, and deep, steady, and sound. Fish jump in the channel, fish jump in the stream. Bring the blue of the ocean back to the forest green. My grandfather's river ran strong and clean through mountains and canyons. She gathered the stream. She watered the land. Every valley with a still knows how. Still old song. She will wash out those dams one day, deep, steady, and sound. Deep, steady, and sound. Deep, steady, and deep, steady, and deep, steady, and sound. Thank you. I'll do another familiar one for some folks who've been around and heard this one. Most people call it, "What If That Kid's Jesus?" When I wrote it, I thought it was called "What Little Kindness," but nobody remembers that. I guess intro here. All the people I know who built the North today, overwhelmingly, the majority were immigrants. Most of the people who became my adopted grandfathers and just took me around and showed me things were from Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Iceland. My ancestors, who came here on the Mayflower, didn't bother to fill out papers. So if we end birthright citizenship, I'm not a citizen. I had an office on the waterfront by Fisherman's Terminal. About got in the first time. For work. Totally guys from Senegal. They would come knocking on my door, the sweetest, kindest, gentlest people I'd ever seen, just hoping for a chance. Some of us got that chance. The waterfront's a big place. It's a welcoming place, no matter who you are. Oh, man. That. Kid sat down at a table, laid his forehead on his arms, skin like coffee, hair like gold, hoping, all day, hoping birth gets the dry land. They walk in here and let it rot. Late. Well, sometimes they see a stranger at the table, and the friend may be the one you have not met. No, you have not met. What if that kid's a Jesus? Who the hell would ever know? Yeah, that kid's been turning loaves and fishes. What little kindness would we show? Just to pack fish. Must be hungry back their way. And who hunts people anyway? Who comes into my shop looking for some bone-tired kid so worn down from trying, he's just zipped his coat right up on his head so he can close his eyes and hope he doesn't wake up dead. No, he doesn't wake up dead. I gotta say, he made a strange sight sitting on that chair like a headless horseman. Must have gave someone a scare. Yeah, we get some character. Have it any other way. What if that kid's Jesus? Who the hell would know? Joe. That boy saying, but in plain view, I said, you can stay or you can go, but if you're troubling my customers, there's one thing I want to know. When that boy you're hunting finds you, tell me, what kindness Jesus, either one of you two. That kid's been turning loaves and fishes. Ain't there some grace that we could show? You see that lantern in the window? It burns both day and night. Skippers coming in from sea know they can steer home by that light. Yeah, the one you're seeking lives near. He comes in here to pray. You can get up off your knees now. Ain't no ticket to pay. What if that kid's Jesus? Who the hell would ever know? That kid's been turning loaves and fishes. Ain't there some kindness we could show? What a little kindness. What little kindness would we show? What little kindness would we show? Thank you. Thanks so much. I'm going to hand it over, and that's a long one, so we'll give it. We'll stop at 2. And Rob, we got Erica next, right?
Man, Brad, I think he keeps getting better, huh? Yeah, another one for Brad. Man, this is turning out good tonight. How about give a round of... If you weren't here, we'd look mighty. As our next presenter, born and raised on the Rock, aka Kodiak, Alaska, calls Astoria home now. And she is the product of two fishermen falling in love and deciding to make a go of it. At some point, I was old enough to earn a cruise share instead of ice cream coupons. Then fish salmon, cod, one halibut trip, dove for sea cucumbers, work docks at... I'm just going to let her tell you the rest. Please welcome Erica Clark. And she's also one of the organizers. She does a lot of work for this to happen.
Yo soy pescador por 10 años profesional. I learned how to speak Spanish from interacting with dock workers because they are an integral part of the commercial. And I became friends with a halibut cheek in 2.5 weeks, which is a great skill to have. The first one is to raise a rebel fishing out in western Alaska has the potential to threaten the most beautiful watershed in North America, Bristol Bay. And so this is how I became a rebel. He was one of those that family for half a decade or more, fishing season after fishing season. We never really knew those old familiar stories of pirates and scallywags, leaving behind the family for the sea. Or in our case, leaving behind chosen family, jumping ship, and moving on to another. But oh, how I loved him, and how he adored me. We would walk hand in hand on sandy beaches of the Aleutian Peninsula, miles and miles at such an amble that now as a parent myself, I know is so monotonous to an adult. I can still remember holding on to his one pointer finger and seeing the oil-stained khaki of his Carhartts slowly striding next to me. Seaweed and sticks and bottles and bones, all of the treasures I had to bring home. My parents laugh about watching he and me through binocular lenses strolling down the coastline, becoming one tall shape a mile or two away, and then growing taller and taller. Upon our return, he, with one hand dragging a hollowed-out buoy behind him, and the other calloused, the leg and arm sprawled over his shoulders. His name was Mike Johnson. He drank Rainier beer with breakfast and gave me a yellow battery-powered AM/FM radio for my 5th birthday. He is one of my earliest memories, and I don't know what happened to him. Growing up in a commercial fishing family in the Gulf of Dyson. And this is an unpaid decades. And I would then be on the VHO, or in some cases the single sideband, depending on how far away he was fishing. So Peggy passed last year. She was a legend in her own way, and she probably saved countless mariners' marriages when she let someone know who was far offshore that their wife was going to have the baby and they needed to get to shore. So this is my own experience listening to the radio, the single sideband. I remember Mom checking the time, realizing that it was almost 8 o'clock, and hustling us up the stairs to gather in the spare bedroom that housed our singles to us after she'd hailed you call sign that still to this day I can repeat at the drop of a hat. KDB21, Dark Star Base. You copy, Chuck? Sometimes we'd get you back immediately loud and clear over the airwaves, and you'd give us a brief recounting of the day, your plans, and how many more days it'd be until you hit port. Sounding like the teacher in the Charlie car. And you were there. You were back to us across the ocean's expanse. And we'd smile as Mom hung up the mic on the clip on the side of the wall and told us all to get ready for bed. Maybe tomorrow you'd be closer. The other nights, though, when you didn't manage to bridge the distance, when you were so far offshore or running strings of gear late into the night, those were the hardest. As Mom repeated the call sign 3 times, hoping to find you wherever you were, that anxiousness among us all became measurable. The spare room often kept closed to trap the heat from the wood stove in the remaining 3 upstairs bedrooms, grew noticeably chillier in each passing second. Mom would immediately flip the channel to the National Marine Weather Service, and we'd listen for the predicted forecast in the area you told us yesterday you'd be heading to. I remember the feeling of disappointment as we filed out of the room, the backward glance to the box in the corner as I flipped off the light and shut the door. The last sliver of light cast from the hallway rested on the from its mount. Me as I walked down the stairs, and the silent prayer that I sent up to anyone who'd listen, that you were warm enough too. So, as a Kodiak brat, I lived through the Exxon Valdez oil spill, and that is actually what made me who I am now. This is me when I was 6 years old. Our life all 1989, my mom worked on the side of Pillar Mountain overlooking. You could see the harbors, you could see the canneries, and you could feel the doom. I was almost 5. And I sat under the stairs day in and day out after my morning preschool was over. Sometimes I got picked up for play dates, but most of the time I played under the stairs. The house we were at family friends was home to a teenage girl and her little brother. The little boy wasn't very friendly, and he didn't share his toys, and he had a reputation for being a bit of a spoiled brat. About 6 years later, that same little boy and that same teenage girl lost their father when their boat sank and all lives were lost at sea. But that April, I sat under the stairs, and I brought bags of toys to play with day in and day out, and listened as my mom rattles off a list of groceries and boom and hoses and tubing and didn't know what it all meant. All I knew, it meant we couldn't go to the beach. And we weren't spending casual afternoons drawing or painting or planting seedlings. No, that April I sat under the stairs. And I sat under the stairs and I listened to my mother and I listened to this other mom talk about what this would do for our futures, to our fisheries, and what the long-term decimation of a fishery might look like. So hopeful that maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't touch our shores, wouldn't coat our beaches like it had in Prince William Sound, that it would miss us, that it wouldn't coat the water's surface like it did there, smothering a season's run of herring roe, a fishery they'd both partaken in many years ago. I sat under those stairs and I listened. As a young woman, I went back to school. I got a master's degree. I wrote my thesis of human-caused technological disasters affect adolescent youth. So many of my generation, and about a half a dozen years older, that sat under the stairs or around kitchen tables and watched their parents as the devastation of our fisheries was foreshadowed in the darkness of the oil as it rolled up on the beaches, and many of our families would never recover. Many families would suffer from depression, alcoholism, and other forms of substance abuse to cope with the loss of a livelihood, the loss of an industry, and the loss of a lifestyle. My entire generation would be told to go to college, get a degree, don't rely on fishing, and many of us would. Many of us would leave the fishing industry because our predecessors told us this was not something to depend on anymore. And because we had witnessed this fallout of a cataclysmic event in fisheries history, I sat under the stairs and I listened and I decided to be the change.
Okay, it's time for another break, so make sure you go down there and get some alcohol and go to the bathroom and come back at 8 o'clock for, I think, Rich King. Thanks again for being here. I hope you guys are having a really good time like I am. All right.
Well, you always hear the cynics say the good old days are over. What sets them off is seeing things that makes them think they're older, like canvas sails and wooden ships, sailors fitting capstan. They'd just as soon go past them by as to be the ones they're passing. When I first shipped aboard that boat, all green and full of nothing, alls I had was on my back $12 and a fiddle, and I preferred the hempen lines, grease when you're not watching, swollen decks and linseed oil, old spars and deck beams cracking. I'll show you where poets go to be deep water sailors and learn the things from yesteryear you need to know tomorrow. I'll show you where poets go to be deep water sailors and learn the things from yesteryear you need to know tomorrow. I remember how I sulked that day, fouling up the stern line. But waves were blinking in the sun, and blue skies bathed the islands. Out there on that western bay, past the lonely breakers, Captain leaves to go below, says, I'll be back, you take her. Well, I knew right then I'd want nothing more than to be the finest sailor, work my way up through the ranks and never be a failure. It's not the winning, but the loss the young ones need to ponder. It's learning how to do things right till the good old days are over. I'll show you where poets go to be deep water sailors and learn the things from yesteryear you need to know tomorrow. I'll show you where poets go to be deep water sailors and learn the things from yesteryear you need to know tomorrow. Well, in northeast gales, no harness on, when lightning struck my noggin, when every time the main boom rose against the north wind howling, and when I lost my compass course and had no chart to guide me, well, what they did in the good old days was take another sounding. Well, maybe that was long ago. I still feel like a sailor. I still dream about the sea, and sure, I've gotten older, but for every wave that knocked me down, the kinder ones sustained me. So I still think of the good old days, so will the ones behind me. I'll show you where poets go to be deep water sailors and learn the things from yesteryear you need to know tomorrow. I'll show you where poets go to be deep water sailors and learn the things from yesteryear you need to know tomorrow. You need to know tomorrow.
Each summer I remember holding hands at the fair midway, whipped cream on our lips from eating hot blueberry pie, carnival rides, fresh squeezed lemonade, pink cotton candy sticks to the cheeks like glue. Looking back, it couldn't have been better if everyone waved a red, white, and blue. So let's go roam the fairgrounds, watch the farmers do what they do, and taste that blue, blue, blue ribbon. Taste that blue ribbon, blueberry pie. It's already past the middle of summer. Pumpkins and squash wait on the vine. Bright flowers are for picking. Grapes are ready for jelly or wine. The swimming season, it's nearly over. Only one thought crosses this silent mind. We all want to meet at the midway, maybe hold somebody's hand. So let's go roam the fairground, watch the farmers do what they do, and taste that blue, blue, blue ribbon. Taste that blue ribbon, blueberry pie. Well, next year, like you, I'll be returning with a lady, little ones all running around. Can't miss that golden busy fairground. It'll be a time for a barrel of fun. I got a memory of a Ferris wheel spinning. So many friends we cherish aren't around. But I'll be back next year with a dream and a wish to come holding my grandchild's hand. So let's go roam the fairground, watch the farmers do what they do, and taste that blue, blue, blue ribbon. Taste that blue ribbon, blueberry pie. Taste that blue ribbon, blueberry pie.
Eastward waits Liverpool, and it's there we all must go. Young and old, the sailors of the Catherine Doyle, through the wind and the rain and snow. Through the wind and the rain and snow. Through the wind and the rain and snow. Young and old, the sailors of the Catherine Doyle, through the wind and the rain and snow. Our sails are set and we make our course, all the ladies they will pray for the safety of their sailor lads, for good health while they're away. But a sailor, he never knows a prayer. He is reckless, foolish, and bold, and wiser when he's old. When he's old. Well, his eyes, they sting in the salty spray, his hands, they're rough and cold, and his heart's all filled with a sailor's dreams, dreams he's chosen over gold. Come with me, my bonny fair maid, won't you steal me from the sea? For I long to have a reason to go, this sailor seldom sees. This sailor seldom sees, this sailor seldom sees. For I long to have a reason to go, the sailor seldom sees. snug and warm, the snows of the hill country. Could you hide my eyes from the mountain stream when it tumbles to the sea? So lay up your sailing.
We don't have sound. We do have sound. How we doing, Scott? Give a big hand to our sound. They're making this a good night. We're right on time. So, a neighbor of mine in 70s and 80s, and probably 10 years group. Everybody quit and left without a group, and I went to Rich and I said, Rich, can I get in your group? And I kind of went my way. Went back to Rich and I said, Rich, so we have been fishing. Rich and his wife Marcia are good. He's a man, fisherman. He's a wood carver in Kilauea, Hawaii, on the island of Kauai. So please welcome my good friend, Rich King.
Oh boy. William Sound, and Humpy's run odd. So there's never been any doubt about how odd I was, but now it's the odd season. Oh man, I forgot my capo. At any rate, I can probably get Brad to get it to me. I'll get underway here because I don't really need it for another song. My songs this year aging out of it's really true of most of my year. Song happens to be about some of the that I don't know what that means. How's that? Better? It's the end of salmon season. I'm still looking for a reason, and I haven't found the fortune or the fame. When I'm in my skipper's chair, I'm constantly aware of my affliction, my addiction to. I got fish disease, and it took me to my knees, and I was terrified of leaving it behind. I was 66, catching salmon was my fix. Now retirement's the ghost that's on my mind. Retirement's the ghost that's on my mind. And a dreamer in a rock chair. The boat
breaking out in sweats, yeah. You know, season that were fine. Must rearrange. To fix her up her time. We all got fish disease, and our boats could use an upgrade just as well. We're relics from the past, and we're disappearing fast, and I know that letting go, I know that letting go. Off with my past. Wonder why that I had fish disease and it took me to my knees. I was terrified of leaving it behind. When I was 66, catching salmon was my when you're used to all of a sudden that is I have known a lot of people and trustworthy how resourceful fishermen are, and the things that they get done are truly a miracle to me. So this one happens to be about seiners in particular. Superhuman. Our suit. When there's trouble, it's always looming. They're not bothered when their foot's in the bind. Well, I got an understanding with all these moving parts, strategizing new plans to get an early start. They're adjusting life's dilemmas and the problems that they face. Hell, if they were politicians, they might say, and the bills are owed. Lots of extra baggage from the members of the crew, hanging with white knuckles, trying to keep it all afloat, 'cause it's not a two-way love affair living with a bow. But seiners are can keep stuff running with their hearts. Are superhuman. They can keep running through the night when that trouble is always looming. They're not bothered when their foot's in the bind. Well, they're adding extra zeros to a high-stakes poker game while sitting in a lineup for a slice that might sustain their perspective on a lifestyle, knowing time is running out for a cup of water is a struggle. Always pay. But saners are superhuman. They can fix stuff running with their hearts.
Uh-oh. See how this goes. In the commercial salmon fishing business for 50 years come July. I know. As it turns out, we will have been married for 50 years come July, right? So I really only have everybody. As it turns out, I wrote. So it's for those of you who knew you wanted to fish for the rest of your lives the very first day that you ever gave it a try. And I know you're out there, and I know there's people that have touched their toe in the water and moved on to other passions, but this is for you guys. See if I can do this. So this is about the journey that we went through over all that time. Okay, here we go. Well, we were married in a feverish small Alaska town. Bought ourselves a dory and headed for the. We settled on the west side. Made a lot of love and sang her song about the tide and how life is gone. Fun. Soon we got a drift boat, but we could call her home. Chasing silver line and Ringo, tide moving on. Is gone. Yeah, the tide moves you on, so you gotta have fun. Go out and come back. Then together. Well, so we
bought ourselves a seine. Another chunk of lifetime. And you know what we found? Could sing that song about the tide moving on and how soon life is gone. Yeah, the tide moves the sun. Yeah, the tide moves on. Gonna have fun. Now we're headed for the harbor with wrinkles in a lull. I'm trying to get my head around being indispensable. Handing off a culture to a crew that's so proud that they can feed the world and they know what it's about. That no matter who you are, you gotta sing that song. And soon life is gone. Yeah, the tide moves you on. You better have fun. Thank you. Thank you so much.
For Rich King. Seems like yesterday. Young old age creeps up on you. Watch your step. Though Robin Koger had a fly in Alaska. As camp mama, Robin prepared gill nets and boats for fishing. Please welcome Robin Koger.
Can you hear me? Fishing for words. Like wrestling salmon. Just at the surface, caught by the gills, at the back of my throat, on the tip of my tongue, fighting for a life of their own, fertile, dying to spawn. To my origin, to my beginning, and long to navigate the flight plans, packing tape, Sharpie and scale, weighing, taping, and marking each box, tallying and totaling and tetrasing, SUV, bush plane, ATV trailer, up the beach and over the bluff, 1,300 pounds to unpack, put away, and pack in. At the edge, in the interval between air and ocean, oxygen and hydrogen, lungs and gills, curves aluminum. From to arms, carving and shaping. Then another. My rubber bands, the barrier, the pressure rising, compressing my feet, my ankles, my calves, my thighs. I am called to keep going. Salt water finds my heart, holds me closer, makes love to me. Every time I step into the skiff. I'm not proud. I'm a fish covered in scales. My tail swimming in coral gardens, blooming with anemones, diving and breaching, reaching for oxygen with whales, bounding through bubble nets, chasing salmon on their return run in their zero-sum game, dying to get some where they came from. I'm not proud. I'm just a cannery girl, filleting fish covered in scales. Daydream dancing. Dipping my fingers in the space, riding the waves like my own, holding the bow line, knees bent, swinging with sway in a coral ballroom. Glowing beneath the surface, Poseidon and me. See all her colors and shapes, angry shadows whipping me home to greet me with a smile in the early morn. Submerged shadows surfacing, circling in their curiosity, selective memories, schooling me in the mysteries of the sea. The shape of salmon, water droplets, rainbow prisms, glistening on intersecting netting, encapsulating the shape of salmon. So, sitting in town this last winter, flipping through the channels, this poem came to me. Cave dwellers. If our ancestors were to see, they would be as confused as me by the fireplace channel on my TV. Storms, our shelter, of our human frailty, delicate as beach. Saltwater. The brine of my tears carried on ripples and waves and tsunamis as grief consumes me, never fully disappears, even after all these years. Energy, static, electric, reappears, and squeezing the clock. Lines. I've got too many lines to keep track of. I've got one line with knots tied in it I use to keep track of my speed. I've got one line tied to the buoy I use to keep track of my boat. I've got one line I use to keep me tied to those I need. I've got one line tied to my boy I use to keep him from sowing all those wild oats. And I'm always looking for just one more line. I've got one line I keep tied fine. One I won't cross. I've got one line too many. I'm tied in knots. Learning to let surf. Mud and sea salt scrub. And a neoprene and a manicure. Seashell girls. Cleaning razor clams, shucking shells in a growing pile, necks and feet too much to eat. Invite the rest of the island. Come over to our fire pit. Telling stories, sharing a meal, passing around the $14 guitar. Beauty and bone. And muscles toned, heads hard, bent knees and tools, fighting for dollars and respect, mentoring, mothering, and mending nets against Alaska's fisher women. I'll take no bets. So in Alaska, even when the sun is high and doesn't set, the moon is still visible in those daylit skies. Holding space. That wasn't a poem, that was an introduction to this one. Sorry. Holding space. I've seen the moon in daylight, holding space for night. That will not come. Coastal living, crab pots stacked in port, the fleet docked, gear shack slow rolling, storms brewing along with coffee and beer. Rest relinquishes itself to anticipation. Nets are draped on racks, inspected and repaired, prayers for a good season, and safe return are floated on whispers, careful not to tempt the fates in whose hands we place our fortunes. The fisherman's memorial stands watch as we pull away from shore. I've known a few old fishermen. Perhaps you have a Mac in your town, too. Mac's capacity. History present in his slow gait and twisted hands, showing up every day. Clean, well-lit place. Coffee and wiping tables with no checks, casting his in other scales. He's filling the emptiness of his sleeve when he's told to leave. Before it all comes to an end. Clinging to community amongst strangers, calls friend. Fisted like arthritic fingers grasping the pot he poured from. The future. Some of you have told me you knew Oscar Haynes on Chiswick Island. Lies just fishtails of wrestling, roiling nets. Thank you.
That was a lesson in how to read poetry. Thank you, Raman. Our next performer, it should be familiar to anybody who's been at FisherPoets. Hobie Kider, now retired. Hobie ran a fishery office for Salmon for All in Astoria for the last 14 years of his career. Please welcome Hobie.
Is many years ago in the net loft to meet a group of fishermen. Helmer is somebody who made a difference when the dams were being put in. When the plans for Bonneville Dam were first published, there were no fish passages. And he thought, well, that's simple. He took it around Astoria. And he visited street in Astoria. And he said, Helmer, not only will I sign your petition, but he wrote out a list of names, and he said, because I signed, and the next one signed because he signed, and etc. And it went down the bottom of the list with the governor. Now, that wasn't the only thing that made the difference, but it was one of the things that did much damage these days. When I was a younger man, the sand filled our nets. When in spring the Chinook ran, while the June hawks broke all beds. So please allow an old man's wish to view again those days of yore, when a man upon the fish could almost walk from shore to shore. The river is deep and it is wide, the river of the West. There's not a fisherman who lied when he boasted it the best. We'd set our nets to make a drift and let the river be our guide. By the gills running tide. Small when it was Chinook, we saw through the nets those silvers glide. Many's the man there lost his boat, out picking the river all alone. One by one down goes each float, his fortune sinking like a stone. So please, the man upon the thank you. This next one dates from a long time ago. When my dad, who was a lifetime smoker, he'd been sick. Who decides how he wants to. down to old Ilwaco town. Now just the other day, down by the Columbia and off in Baker's Bay, met an old fisherman, aged as the sea, and these are the very words that he said to me. I've been fishing these waters now for many years. I know I will shed and a friend of mine is me. River, now I'm gonna end up in the sea. Oh, the sea once gave me back my life. You know, I've used it best I could. So when I die, don't bury me in no coffin made of wood. I'll just fish these waters like I've done till death comes calling me. And I'll just jump into that river. I'll go back to the sea. This is a fishery. Columbia River gillnet fishery, which was the main fishery of the Columbia River commercial salmon fishing industry, was one of the most complex in the world. And there were two main kinds of nets that were used and many variations off of that. But there's the floater. The floater net was fished at the top of the water column on the incoming tide, which is called the flood tide. And the diver was fished on the bottom of the water column on the outgoing tide, which is the ebb. And they weren't fished in the same part of the river. A way to put it is that from Tongue Point to the sea was the floater's domain, while farther upriver, the river did sail. Floater net, you had these big cedar floats called corks on the cork line. And in the diver net, which was much more heavily leaded so it would sink, the cork line was suspended with, at least at one period of time, with aluminum floats that would allow the net to sink enough that the net would fish along the bottom of the thing. And they were called cowbells because of the sound they made when they came over the roller. So those are the definitions you need for this song. when the fishing was the boats made of wood. On end was Saturday closure. Nets were designed. Floaters or divers were those to be found, with lead line and cork line balanced just so to fish at the depth intended to go. Remember the time when the fishing was good, the nets made of linen, the boats made of wood. Seasons closures, the nets for them. Floaters on the flood. Each fisherman knew how to hang his own web to his own do. He kept to himself and shared with no one. Remember the time when the fishing was good, the nets made of linen, the boats made of wood. Seasons were for and Saturday closures, the nets. With leads to aluminum cups. The bottom could rise. The fishing was good. The nets made of linen, the boats made of wood. Seasons were set for weeks upon end, with Saturday closures, and that's for the men. Remember the time when the fishing was good, the nets made of linen, the boats made of wood. Seasons were set for weeks upon end, with Saturday closures, the nets for the men. Thank you very much.
You got me over here? Oh, good. That was Hobie Kider, everybody. Could we bring up the... Yeah. One of the things that I do on occasion is... hold on a second. I know how to work this thing. I take photographs on the website as well as on Facebook. If you all don't mind, I would like you to express how you feel right now about what you've heard tonight so far while I take your photograph. Is that okay? All right, go. Thank you all very much. We'll begin again tonight. We're having our break right now, so.
After a long, bitter, cold day on the water, I'm at the bar with a glass of bubbly ale. sharing salty tales with a few of my friends. The bartender hands me a large bay scallop shell. This shell, I said, is a big part of our way. Warms a chilly winter's night and a snowy day. Cold waters around us are now so clear. Bay scalloping was a livelihood for most of us here. Mackerel clouds overhead are moving on. We call it a sailor sky, and the wind lightens, flattening the water, bringing a following tide. You can taste the salt waves and the fresh autumn air. Watch the gulls drop their shells from way up there. Haul our drags, feel the rope tighten, hear our Evinrude go slow. We'll try a better place where the eelgrass grows. In the shucking shack, Susie's empty shells are piled way up high. No one matches her rhythm, her wit, and her welcome smile. She is the fastest cutter everyone knows. No one can match the speed that her shocking knife goes. Mackerel clouds overhead are moving on. We call it a sailor sky, and the wind lightens, flattening the water, bringing a following tide. Oscar, a scalloper, there's none like him today. He fished in a catboat vanity, following the old-timers' ways, pulling the drags on the bottom, culling with his bare hands. Even in a wintry wind, he was a warm-hearted fisherman. Well, the bartender, he took the shell back into his palm, and he turns to the crowd. We are all sitting so calm. He said, you just heard it from someone who can tell a tale of this old coastal town. You know, he did it while holding just one shell. Overhead are call sailors, and the wind lightning the water, bringing a following
white Maine spruce, the rain so even, you can almost hear the music now. Sidewood bent in the water steaming, and the easy slide of a dovetail saw. I learned these skills, but no one taught me. I make guitars that others play. Too much rain and darn long winters, but I love the work of a luthier's trade. First things first, the rest for later. I'll get it done in my sweet time. No sense rushing, where's the fire? I don't see no finish line. You might think I don't deliver. I just know how hard I try. When you work with wood, gotta give the glue some time to dry. When you work with wood, gotta give the glue some time to dry. Blackwood, ebony, any kind of rosewood, cedar and mahogany, I can work 'em all.
Scott.
Bridge clamps, dressing files, fretting hammers, tears and smiles, hanging in the wood shop,
everybody.
one and all. Life's too
I just
short,
have a few announcements
but I'm
before we
still
get
working.
started.
What's the next design to
First of
try?
all,
A handmade,
at
custom built,
1147
fully
Commercial
unconventional
Avenue,
app.
There's Fisher Poets that have stuff to sell. Books. My book. And there's a silent auction. And there's also, I want to plug an art show that my wife and I put up of, it's called A Kaleidoscope of Fisher Poet Retrospective. And it's portraits of different Fisher poets that we did digital magic on. And it's at the South Bay Wild Fish House, which is on 9th Street between Commercial and Marine. And so, all right. I'd like to thank Port Hopper for its generous readership grant this year to support Fisher Poets. Duncan Berry for his generous readership grant this year to support visiting Fisher Poets. Freight Beer, the Writers Guild of Astoria, the Astoria Warrenton Chamber of Commerce are all supporters of the Fisher Poets Gathering, and we couldn't do this without them. So please offer a round of applause for those folks. This hour is an old, but I met Rob Seitz when I hired him as a deckhand back in 1996, and he was the best I ever turned into a heck of a fisherman. He now fishes out of Warrenton, and he crabs here, and he shrimps, and he long lines. And then in his off hours, when he's not doing that or working on his boat, he's the third string dishwasher at the South Bay Wild Fish House. So please welcome my good friend, Rob Seitz.
How come Hey, thanks a lot for being here. Okay. First, I want to mention, I hope I ever might take myself so seriously that I can't read a poem about taking a dump in a 5-gallon bucket. Okay, 2.5 gallons per flush. Grandpa's old wooden fish boat wouldn't have been complete without that 5-gallon bucket outfitted with a toilet seat. You'd just fill it half full of water straight from the deck hose, apply the seat, and assume the pose. There was no plumbing to go awry. When you're done with your business, you just dumped it over the side. Well, them saddle bronc cowboys got nothing on me, 'cause I've rode that bucket in 40-foot seas. And weather like that, it was quite a ride. Pants around your ankles. The water from the bucket would get your backside. Toilets designed by the French. Had to ride that bucket. You just sure beat the hell out of hanging your cheeks. Yeah, he must don't give me these little writing projects. This is about something that happened a long time ago. Back in 1993, I was working on this dragger called the Captain Frank, and we were trawling for thorny heads and black cod off the Washington coast, and like 500 fathoms off the Quileute River. And a Navy sub ended up getting tangled up in the cables that connected the boat to the net, and they ended up dragging us around backwards for a while until we could manage to break the cables. So this is called Going Backwards Fast. Thinking about the Cold War. Get your asses on deck. Nor did I pause to contemplate the state of world affairs while we hauled ass backwards at 15 knots. The egos of world leaders were the furthest thing from my mind when the water coming up the stern ramp reached waist high. Now, once I had sufficiently cleared the sleep from my eyes to understand the gravity of our situation, my consciousness was pretty much occupied with the task of parting the cable attaching the dragger I was on to the sub dragging us, and deploying a life raft just in case. It was over. I got a call from driving that sub, which and wanted to reach out. He said not long after they snagged us, subs going into Bangor, Washington, transiting on the surface because hell, we're in. I thanked him for his service. But all that has changed now, and I've been thinking a lot about Rob. Well, more accurately, Rob's replacement, wondering if he's any better at spotting fishing gear, because it's looking like going backwards fast again is becoming a real possibility. Thank you. Thanks a lot. That used to happen kind of regularly. The sister ship to the South Bay is actually on the bottom, the Cameron, because they caught a sub when they were double rigging for shrimp. But anyway, the guy really did call me after he retired. It was like 2 years after we opened the restaurant, and that's how he found me. He said they were doing, waiting to enter the Straits of Juan de Fuca, and they were at a depth of 400 feet just doing big circles, and they happened to catch us, you know. So anyway, the owner of the boat got pissed that we lost the net, and he wanted the Navy to buy him a new one, so he, you know, called the TV news and made a big deal out of it, and For a little while, it was kind of a big deal. But so I call this one the bright side. Going backwards at 15 knots, unintentionally, and under another vessel's propulsion is a crappy way to wake up from a nap. But if you tell the story right, you won't have to buy a drink for a while. Thank you. Okay, and then my final sub-poem. It's called Aftermath. It seemed like everyone in town wanted us to go fishing. Wives, girlfriends, fish plant, boat owner, bartenders, and Coke dealers. Everyone. No one wanted to hear our story about catching the sub anymore. Didn't know money to, we're just sick of us. We tried to be brave, like the characters in the stories we told in the bar. But the fact is, we couldn't get the memory of that night out of our heads. So we kept looking for reasons to stay in town. The foot rope wasn't right. The trawl doors needed adjustment. Blah, blah, blah. Then we'd spend every night in the bar drinking and snorting courage. Go fishing. So we finally left. Ready for some much-needed C-hab and hopefully a paycheck. Looking back, I suppose it's worth mentioning, whether we were willing to admit it at the time or not, the stuff we were doing at night in the bar to feel brave was more likely to lead to our demise than catching another sub. But that didn't help us sleep any better. Thank you. Okay, so and puts on weight the fastest. And that's how they get genetic putting on weight fast, you know. And I came up with this poem called Genetically Modified Fisherman. It's a racial profiling piece, so hopefully no one will be offended. It's a well-known fact among those of us in the fishing industry that Norwegians and Portuguese are born with the knowledge of how to catch fish. The rest of us got to figure it out as we go. We Scotch-Irish Germans seem to figure out how to catch fish by figuring out all the ways not to catch fish first. There has been many times I've been stuck behind some Norwegian or a Portuguese, waiting for them to get done unloading. How different life would be. And Dad a Portuguese. Hasn't it been a legend recently retired, and I'm happy to say some good friends of Joel and Tell bought his boat, and him and his family are working it up out of Sitka. I need to get his names. I wanted to tell you so you could buy his fish over the internet. Anyway, this is called Blair Miner's Boat. Blair Miner's boat left him for a younger fisherman out of Alaska. So he decided to retire. Gonna miss BSing with that old SOB on the way to my boat, way the hell down the dock. But I think I'm gonna get his slip, though. Maybe I'll keep it. I hone my skills properly, will lament their lost good. That slip comes open. Thank you. Oh man, I just realized I cussed on the radio. Okay. Kat went to Alaska to be a forklift driver in 2007 because it sounded like a wonderful adventure. She ended up set netting in the Cook Inlet, which led to joining the herring fleet in Crystal Bay Drift Fleet, who she found in Alaska, and two beautiful cats. Please welcome Kat West.
Drop your anchor, but be sure that one stand down. I guess it's all right. Been a day, so while the river builds, then 5 become 9. Pub crawl of galleys, snap and floor. Sure. We've got 4 guitars. Mood is happy and mellow. Buoys and buckets become drubs, and Lauren brought a cello. Grills get together on Anchor and Ugashik. We get pretty clever. We put up a king. Oh, you've got one too? We've got plenty to share. Come on through. The wine box is empty. The cooler gets low. Skippers nervously watching the tide in case we need to break lines and go. Merriment made, crew members singing, make haste with that grog, the tide will be swinging. First the boats start to jostle, better get on that bow and check those lines. Yep, it's time, fire up the engine. It's time to go find our hole. A raft up is like the season. Love it, and I love you. That was a Gashik poem where I spent most of the seasons. This is called Deranged. I can't wait to get back to Alaska. I'll leave this crap behind. You can commute, you punch the clock. I've got a different kind of grind. High and wild, but down not for everyone, honestly. Tough guys just barely get through it. I'll sleep when I'm told, I'll eat veggies from a can, I'll drink instant coffee, I'll even eat Spam. It's a different life, different rules apply. A month together in the cabin, kiss your privacy goodbye. Why then do we go? Commit our bodies, our time, live in our boots, sleep on our rack, work on our knees in the blood and in slime. What is wrong with me? Oh, Alaska, that sounds so dangerous. Is a reckless captain. I know I must be deranged. Be estranged. Sky, the same color gray. Rolling sway. Both water's gentle lapping and the tide change. I enjoy the way the deck smells on a sunny day after a good haul, you know, hot metal, blood, and diesel, while the seagulls chase and call. But man, this crewmate bugs me. And I'm sure he can feel my scorn. But for all the years that I've come up here, I always get a greenhorn. We'll bicker, and I will be petty. But we'll also joke and play. I run this deck, and I've got it down, and he had better learn my way. See, I've got this down to a science. There's a system, and there is no lag. I just can't stand to watch his stupor. What is he doing with that brailer bag? Exploded. We're thrashed from all. Maybe the boatyard ain't so bad. Or they me off, but don't get me wrong. Soon I'll sleep on land, but in my bed I'll rock and sway. I'll see the horizon behind my eyelids. That part remains unchanged. Relatable, right? This is called anchor problems, which may also be relatable. We've got anchor problems. 2 anchors on board, but not one that sticks. 2 anchors, but also no anchor. We've got electrical problems. We've got toilet problems. We've got weather problems. We've got battery problems. Today was a good day. We slept 5 hours, but we have toaster problems. Our anchor didn't drag and the boat started, but we have reefer problems. We put the net in and we started getting hits. Fuel charged through the district. Our gear. But so that's a problem. We've got carabiner problems. I watched a full shackle disappear under the AVIC. It might as well have eaten my beating heart. We did get the gear back eventually. No ghost net problems. Have you ever stripped and hung an entire shackle on deck in bad weather with a cold ripping wind? Of course you have, because we have mental problems. This is when the Coast Guard comes. Not 1 skiff, but 2. Yes, we got a ticket because we have survival suit problems. They did leave when the anchor started dragging. We have alternator problems. Our backup alternator has problems. We couldn't reset the anchor because it has a massive boulder jammed in the bowl with a Bruce. Anchor problems. We've got fish problems. So let's just tie up at the dock. Nope, we've got tide problems. We've got mechanical problems, we've got generator problems, a full season worth of problems just in the first few days, and not one of them solved yet. We're right side up though. That's a good problem. Holly, if you're listening, I don't have to tell you that was the 2022 season. It was quite painful for us, and it did not get better. We cried so much. Speaking of crying, at the end of the season, I wrote something in my journal about being a fisherman in Alaska, and I'm going to read that now. My season is over. I'm wearing clean clothes, and I've had a land shower. I'm drinking a cold beer on the roof we watched Gene fall off those years ago, and then we sat in the clinic to keep him company, strapped in and immobilized on a stretcher because the weather wasn't good enough for a life flight. I look around. Land is so dirty. Sadness weighs heavily upon me, and I find tears flowing over my face. It's difficult for me to understand. And then the next season, I didn't come back. And then I would never come back, but it was something that just happened. It was gradual. A season on a boat I always wanted to work on, with the crew and the captain that I always wanted to work with, the boat that Todd and I talked about buying. I started this season with stars in my eyes, thinking that after a decade of talking about running our own boat, this was the year we could make it happen, even though we were and we would live the life with loving arms, although some have on a permanent way. Around the boatyards, a suitcase here, a garbage bag there, gloves, sweaters, socks, nail polish, crayons, exactly how I left it. So this morning when we broke lines to put me ashore, I broke into a sob. I cried when I got to my locker. I cried when I found some of Michael's old clothes, when I took a shower, when I drove into town. I do not love Naknek. Why does this hurt so much? This is an ugly place. No regular person would make the effort to come here. This is not the wild and romantic backdrop that people imagine when I tell them that I work in Alaska. There's trash everywhere, and it smells like cigarettes. But this is a boatyard. It's the boatyard where I planned much of my life, and I dreamt about much of my future. From this spot, mud flats strewn with bloating fish carcasses in front of me, and hydraulic and pneumatic pumps screaming right behind. But I'm done now, and I know it, and it won't be an accident this time. It's starting to hurt too much. The future we planned, it's not gonna happen. I have no reason to ever come here again. The locker right in front of me, that's where Todd asked me to marry him. And that old dilapidated locker on the bank of the Naknek River, on the edge of Vodka Park in the Lower Lummi Yard. For 14 years, I kept my life here, and tonight I'm gonna round it up, and I'm gonna leave it in the free pile. The things that I bothered to keep here are precious, but outside of this place, they're worthless, and only people who've spent time here can understand. Sitting on the roof, listening to a million seagulls feasting on guts from the pump out, looking for bears, singing A Pirate Looks at 40, and crying into my beer. There's no reason to ever come here again, and it breaks my heart in a way that it's never been broken before. I did run into a friend of mine that next morning, and I explained to him all the reasons why. Shoulder and said, this is I'm quite sure. When you're on a boat, you have limited access to the things that you need, but perhaps didn't address. When you left the dock, you went down the list for the essential items that you just can't miss. The captain, of course, must keep the boat running, but while he sweats in the las, I'm on the deck sunning. See, I'm just a deckhand, but I've got my priorities. My at sea, my favorite picking hook, of course. A rotation of sports. I don't stink when I do. I suspect we have same. It's the matter of beer. If you're a dry boat, that's fine. But when it comes to labor, you're not getting mine. Nothing beats a cold beer. a light lager, an IPA, a stout, a Weizen, even an A. Beer is the joy after a day hard won. Do you fish Ugashik? Down fun. A toast to my captain, a toast to our tender. Don't get excited, this isn't a bender, or maybe it is. If the season is done and the hell out of Alaska I'm trying to run. A beer is the comfort when you do the books. A beer is the prize for the deckhand who cooks. It's hard on the boat, hour to hour. We need these small treats, and I'll take 2 for my shower. Now, space on the vessel is a meticulous game. Save room for the beer, just don't be lame. It can chill on the deck. It doesn't even have to be that cold. I mean, it doesn't even bother me. Ice it in the fish hold. Until next season, make for spring, when you run through the essentials of the things you bring advised. Put suds on that list. I guess I've said it. To fishermen all, fishermen lost, I raise up my beer. Thank you. And thank you, Fort George, for once again bringing back the FisherPoets Stout, which is a collaboration with the Salmon Safe Initiative. Are there any Salmon Safe folks in here? And that strives to build education around safe. Check them out.
Oh man, let's hear it again for best nights of FisherPoets I've ever. You guys have been an excellent audience too. Okay, and don't forget the Poetry Slam is going to be happening at 10 o'clock at the Columbian Theater immediately after this. Okay, Todd Waterfield from Neathart, Oregon, fished various species of gear, species and gear, over 20-plus year commercial fishing career in Washington, Alaska. Recently reformed, he still sails seas as a U.S. merchant mariner. Please welcome Todd Waterfield.
Some people ask me, Todd, what the hell is your deal? You sunk half your life into fishing. Are you leaving it for real? Isn't fishing who you are, the person you'll always be? Identify with the lifestyle. Most for opportunity to go out on we see attitudes and civil pursuits the point of some greater cause. Retirement, a safety net, but if you'd taken the bet. Too risky, uncertain, and scary, for sure. It's a leap that may end in abyss. So instead, you are taking the cure by complaining and shaking your fist. Blame it on overcapitalization. Say what you will about million-dollar boats. I know it looks like pure speculation. You keep crying that BS floats. But salmon are a true commodity, a wild and ever-rising stock whose adherents find no oddity. Listen to Dock Street brokers who are telling you refi the house and think, they gotta be weed smokers. I might as well be divorcing my spouse. And you've already tried pulling yourself up the chain, grinding and clawing into an advantageous spot, but your effort and drive left barely a stain as the market outpaced all you got. One day you got tired of looking around at the ascent of a mere lucky few and thought it was time that you left the ground and started making your fortune too. It was clear that you'd never own a permit. No rich relative would will you the dough. You had no fishing pedigree to submit and no Alaskan residence to show. So it would take an inspired innovation, something fresh and wild with spirit, something truly worthy of oblation, but also ephemeral and hard to audit. Then you struck upon the notion that you'd gleaned from a thread on Reddit. There was a terrible lot of commotion, a funny meme from some awful prick. Crypto Bro was saying, "Enjoy being poor," to us rubes who were refusing to be the latest in a long line of suckers who would buy into his new NFT. What is this thing called? A ridiculous farce, non-fungible and a digital token? Surely Crypto Bro meant to make you an arse with the silver-tongued words that he'd spoken. But did it make sense, though? You fortune somehow. Hesitation might mean being left in the cold. Like that time when bay permits were just $20K and you scoffed at their plea and you were blind to what you actually saw. It was time you decided to stop giving a damn. Hit your cart to a fast project as you counted the game from your prospect. It may not be the catch you were hoping. To sustain life, it will never pretend. And for a rationale, you may be left groping for a solid position on which to defend. Your table sure is the one that you play. Now, deeds, but you sort of like being part rebel. And the carbon footprint, a dozen more mines. But now you can afford to mine. Are running with poison, and the salmon are being turned underground with boat. You don't pretend to have all the answers and won't apologize for grabbing the ring. You weren't the one that planted the cancers, and for subsequent crimes you won't sing. Besides, you say, if you didn't do it, someone else, well, they surely would. We're programmed to get that well should. But is it, though? Simply brutes that push and rush to the head of the line? Our selfishness and greed are true roots. And if not, well, is it too late to stop this decline? Thank you. That's called Salmon NFT, and if you don't know what an NFT is, you're probably better off. So I recently left the fishing grounds for, well, I think for good. I don't know. This is 3 years ago. And I was just looking back at the first poem, the first fish poem I wrote, and it was probably, I'm not really sure on the date because I didn't date that sort of thing back then, but maybe in 1998-ish. I started fishing in 96 on a set net site in Cook Inlet, and we used to have a drawing or writing. So I wrote a poem for that one all those years ago, and it's kind of, this kind of bookends the whole career thing as I'm dealing with, the end of my away from here and back no more, flying. Gone are those, his dear friends, who bring it all to you, who beached the boats and jumped the fire. Flounder ended laugh, who wrestled king above their heads, gritting teeth as they pulled the leads. On Jimmy's boat and Bruce's skiff, their muscles hard, their hands were stiff. For ocean's love and sea to take, the reds they won for winter's break. The run now over, the season done, they must starve. Where call, and they pass for bums. And on the sea they do go forth, but it's worth it all. They one more time before they pass, and they start a and two, and many others. A whole life there is outside, a whole world from which to hide. That's what they think when times are slow. While mending nets, they ache to go. While filling sandbags and hauling brush, they long to be off in a rush, down again into the States, into the hellish, hollow, hellish 48, where man is measured not by his grip, but by his car and bank slip, where all's for sale and Caesar's reign, where poison works into the brain, where TVs blare for fame's plain sake, and men are lost in its wake. Fishing is a gift, I say, a holy task for which I pray, a godly service that they call rape, but an honest judgment that they cannot make. For they have never been away from shore, nor can they walk from home to store, nor pull their boots, nor find their, and who, I ask, heeds that kind of prick? They just don't know what it does take, nor understand what lies at stake. So think again as you go down, of all the sorrows they have to drown, of all their sickness and their fears, and all our laughs and warm beers, and think of how you'll make your end. I've kind of struggled with trying to find a way to introduce this next poem. I only have two poems left. I was on the Big Red, and I did the salmon fishery and Cook Inlet for about 10 years, and that one for about 10 years. This poem is about a friend of mine, a crew member that was on the Big Red with me, and he passed recently. A younger man than I am, and it was just a sad and tragic loss. He was a great human being, and it's got kind of an unfortunate title. We kind of had a inside joke, and so it's based on that. But it's this is dedicated to Peter Redfield. It's called "Petered Out." It may have had a purpose. There may have been a plan. Someday it may even surface what took the fisherman. He laughed up all the warnings, called bluff of every risk, took tide on each morning, and searched for merely trifle, his gut of iron ore, the rolling could hardly stifle, his laugh or cuss or roar. With mitts the likes of bear claws, and body big as fin, the man could still admit his flaws, repent his deadly sins. Apostle Peter, though not what got him in. That while his nature always after. Perhaps it was a dream he had. The fish was 20 feet and mad and tried to cut and strain. A monster not this one would not be talking. And one of Peter's final thoughts been that his last battle. Thanks. I hope my old skipper and his wife, I guess I should say my old skipper Joe and the real boss Joy, hopefully are watching this on the live stream, but it's this one is also that light off. It's okay. For the night, thanks. I don't know your boat. Y'all look the same. Metal dinghies bobbing round don't fit the figures I see in town. Don't match the rig I wave to on the road. Don't put up stop signs saying, that's so-and-so. If I see an opening, I'll surely set. I'll cork you off like we've never met. I'll give you room, but what I see fit. You can call me names. I know it's rude, but don't blame for killing fish and cracking beer. I'll be a fisherman till I'm done. And sometimes that means I'll make you mad. I'll take the fish you could have had. And that's the nature. That's the business. You drift the bay, you're sure to witness 1,000 slights to your person. They'll hack and cut without aversion. And most you'll say, it's not worth my time. But God have mercy, you cross that line. I keep a gun under my pillow. Engines roar, black smoke billows. I'll grab your buoy in place of mine. I'll shove that buoy where the sun don't shine. I'll tear your net and I'll cut your rope. I'll thrash your gear till there is no hope of catching fish or making mends. But in the morning, I'll be your friend. Thanks. Okay.
Oh man, I hate these stinking glasses. Thanks a lot, man. That's what I love about emceeing. You know, you got to sit here and see who you see, and I always end up seeing people that I wouldn't have seen that I really enjoyed. You know, so thanks a lot for being here. Okay, yeah. Okay, Kurt Holting got his first crew chance on a salmon seiner out of Petersburg, Alaska in 1969. The Central Gulf and Bristol Bay. He also was Southeast Alaska for 25 years. He currently lives on Whidbey Island and is here to read was released last month by Kurt.
It's been a long evening and a great evening, and I'm really honored to be here at FisherPoets to share some stories from Apprentice to the Wild. It's actually not a book of poems, it's a book of essays, but I want to start, I want to warm up with a poem. It's an ode to my lifelong love affair with salmon and with Alaska, and I call it 10 Tips for Living. Beauty. Know how beautiful you are. Dance. Have grand adventures. All the way to Kamchatka and Hokkaido. Move under your own power. Navigate by the stars. 3, be intimate with the tides and currents. Play the edges constantly. Find your joy there. 4, hang out with charismatic megafauna. eagles and sea lions and humans and upwellings, and where the herring come to spawn. 5, know where you are going and let nothing stop you. Remember in your bones the exact location of the stream where you were born. Know where you are always in relation to. Your body tells you it's time. Seven, to return the swift people whose lives are bound so closely to yours. 8, when at last you reach the home stream, head straight into the current and start climbing. Climb the rapids, climb the waterfalls, climb the very mountains. Bend yourself to that final act of love that will keep it all going. 9, let go of any thought of preserving your beauty now. Let your body morph, sprout humps and fangs and rainbow colors. And in the final act of union, pour yourself out with your lover into the stream that will be your progeny. 10, let it all go now. Feed the animals with your spent body. Stray far into the ancient forest as you swim down their bodies and back into the soil. Become the very flesh of the forest itself. Climb to the top of the trees. Now, thank you. So I'm going to read a little bit from read part of a story of a halibut longline trip in the Central Gulf. It happened for me in 1982. We had departed the harbor in Seward at midnight and were underway to the halibut grounds in the Central Gulf of Alaska. As we passed Ragged Island, clearing the protection of Resurrection Bay and entering open ocean, the gradual transition from calm waters to the ocean swells had prodded me from my slumber. This was a familiar rhythmic sway, not unpleasant, a call and response between the ocean swells and the currents of sleep. But Anders, our skipper, had been acting erratically since my arrival in Seward to join the crew of the F.V. Lloyd 2 days earlier. We were headed out on a 4-day opening, and I was already questioning my choice to come. After this opening in the Gulf, we would continue westward all the way to the Bering Sea and a full month of prospecting for halibut in the world's wildest waters. What have I gotten myself into, I thought, as I wedged myself more firmly into my bunk, falling back into a fitful sleep. With a big chunk of our annual income at stake, and more boats competing every year for the same quota of fish, these short halibut openings were turning into compressed one-shot deals, a huge roll of the dice, and an intensely competitive orgy of high seas wrangling that the fleet had euphemistically dubbed halibut derbies. We would all ships on a single piece of invisible wheel of fortune. If we landed on the fish, we made a lot of money quick. If we missed the fish, better luck next year and plan on a day job this coming winter. I had flown up from Petersburg to join the crew of the Lloyd in Seward at the head of Resurrection Bay on Alaska's Kenai Peninsula. Though I had a decade of salmon seining under my belt, I was still something of a greenhorn in the halibut fishery. This was my first crew chance on a serious longliner, and I wondered if I would make the grade. In retrospect, the danger signs had been obvious the preceding 2 days as we baited our gear and readied the boat for this opening in the Central Gulf. A bravado seemed to take hold of Anders that felt edgy to me. That bravado only ramped up when we hit the bars in Seward earlier that evening. Something was off with Anders, but no one else on the crew seemed concerned, so I pushed down my own growing dread. I headed straight for my stomach. Didn't want to be there. The prospect of a month in the Bering Sea with a wild man for a skipper had taken all the wind out of my sails. I hoped a deck load of halibut over the next few days would give me the attitude overhaul I needed. That imagined deck load vanished in a flash. The collision was deafening, the bow stem taking the brunt of impact just a few feet from where we were now deep in sleep. Racing up the ladder from the forecastle, I sprang through the hatch into the cramped pilot house in the half light of early morning. What I saw as my eyes coursing through the body, boats. Anders was passed out on the pilot house floor, still barely stirring from his drunken slumber. Even the violence of the impact had scarcely been enough to wake him. It was anyone's guess how long the Lloyd had been running on autopilot with no one at the wheel. I rushed through the galley and out onto deck, the first to arrive there. The Lloyd was lodged between two granite pinnacles, a short distance from a sheer rock cliff stretching as far as the eyes could see in both directions. Ocean swells pummeled the cliff rhythmically, with each swell lifting the Lloyd from her rock perch, then dropping us down again with a bone-jarring crash. Nowhere could I see safety. And flooded my heart. Each passing swell pointed toward a mind-numbing conclusion. I will not get to raise my beautiful daughter. I am about to die. Past and future collapsed into the stark urgency of this inconceivable prospect. Anders' colossal folly had brought us to the precipice of a dark chasm. My thoughts splayed into 1,000 pieces, like a waterfall newly flung from a mountain in its first grasping at thin air. Then my body fired up, adrenaline pumping, my mind flashing instinctively through the relative merits of fight, flight, or freeze. In those brief moments alone on deck, I took the measure of our plight. And as I did, those first jolts of primal dread flipped over just as quickly into an equally fierce will to live. And you're going to have to buy the book to find out if... So I've heard several people already question that we ask ourselves when we're out on the fishing grounds, like, why do we do this? And why do we from another chapter where I kind of meditated on the choice to be a fisherman, especially in a place with the extreme willingly with risk. To survive a relationship with risk, we can live without. We feel most alive when the most is being asked of us, or when our life is most starkly on the line. In truth, our lives are always on the line. It was never otherwise and never supposed to be otherwise. A fact that we do our best to ignore. Humans are creatures who give birth and die, who are bound into the cycle of life and death together with all other creatures, never knowing in what instant, as Gary Snyder has said, the table will be set around us. Sometimes we are the hunters, sometimes we are the prey. The line between the two has always been a thin one. Cultures built around the hunt have long known this. Bound into that same human formula is a hunger for belonging within our tribe and the need to prove ourselves worthy of such belonging. These are ancient hungers, not easily dispensed with. They hark back to a time in our common human experience, ever present and anxieties that prey upon us in our organized lives. That ancient thrill of the hunt is what captured my imagination during my first summers seining in Alaska. The thrill has always been in direct proportion to the risk taken and to the bonds the hunt has always yielded. The strength of camaraderie of commercial fishing is strong precisely because of the shared risk built into it. The physical endurance and sometimes raw courage that is required. On the fishing grounds, everyone shares in the not ride on resume or it does not rest on social background, but on one's capacity to with a blend of competence and courage. For me, and one that I will always. Thank you, and I'm going to read something from the end of my book. So there's lots more stories from commercial fishing and from my years as a wilderness guide in Alaska. But the last section of the book, and I'll keep this kind of short, I call the last section Becoming an Elder. And the final chapters are really stories of taking different kind of risk, not in any way trying to eliminate risk, and really my own wrestling with the question of what does it mean to be an elder in this time? You know, what are those of us who are clearly in this stage of life, what is really being asked of us? And that's a question that I have opened myself to in the last few years. And in the summer of 2022, I went to Poland to volunteer with Ukrainian refugees in the months after the start of the war in Ukraine. And in the summer of 2023, I had an incredible opportunity when I was invited by my friend Szymon Olbruchowski from Szczecin, Poland, to join him in leading. I'm a Zen practitioner, have been for many years, so I like to say also that there's a Zen river running through this book. It's part of my story, and it's sort of between the lines, but I was invited to lead a 7-day Zen Peace Vigil in Kyiv. And it was a I think 15 months into the war. And I just want to share a quote from my young friend Walter Peszkowski, who took part in that retreat and who, come truly like sons to me. Okay, right. So to reflect on the experience, he said, in everything. So this is what's going on for us. For us all now. Uncertainty, and you didn't know how a total crush of reality was to keep my feet on the ground, not just to stay here to hold, because at that time what we saw in Mariupol, what we saw in Kherson, what we saw in the Kharkiv region, it could happen here. I didn't have a strategy of what to do, but I somehow knew deep down that I didn't want to escape. I wanted to bear witness and to be vulnerable. So I just want to leave us with that. For us to take to heart.
We've said it before, but we're going to say it again. You guys were a wonderful audience. Thank you very much.
And want some coffee and between Marine and Commercial, between 9 and 11, mug up.
Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you all very much.
When I was a little boy, my mother said to me, always fear the ocean storms and curse the angry sea. So I never chose the sailor's life or reefed a rain-soaked sail. Spent my youth among these woods, too far from the icy gale. And who should I now listen to when the chances all are gone? Ship in a bottle and a captain's chair, old coats you can't put on. And does it matter in the end when all but memory fails? I'll borrow stories that might have been and tell my finest tales. When I was a bold young man, my dear wife said to me, beware the things you should have done, they'll haunt you constantly. Beware the taste of the briny spray, waves slapping on the hull. I know there's salt still in your blood, and you too know that well. And who should I now listen to when the chances all are gone? Ship in a bottle, pilot charts, old coats you can't put on.